Hello guys. Welcome to the story world. We are to serve you best stories, but we need your help to complete our goal of 1,000 subscribers. So find the subscribe button and please click on it. Let's jumping into story. No one in Morro Bay spoke of the Drowning Expanse without lowering their voice. It was a stretch of open water about 60 miles east, marked on nautical charts by nothing more than a faded grid and the cryptic note, unsurveyed. The Coast Guard claimed it was an outdated label, a relic from before modern sonar mapping. But the fishermen knew better. Nathan Carraway had grown up with those stories. Old men in the dockside bar would speak of tides that ran backward, compasses that spun without wind, and lights flickering beneath the surface. As a boy, he'd pressed his ear to the bar's splintered table and listened, heart pounding. Now, at 32, Nathan told himself he didn't believe a word of it, until the day the Coast Guard found a trawler drifting back into harbor with its deck awash, nets shredded, and no crew. The boat's radio log ended mid-sentence. The last words were, "We're crossing the line," followed by a burst of static. Nathan wasn't the sort to chase ghost stories, but when a marine research group offered him double his usual rate to ferry them into the Expanse, he found himself staring at the sea chart in his small apartment above the bait shop. The spot where the unsurveyed grid began was little more than a faint line, yet it felt like a boundary between two worlds. At dawn, he walked to the harbor with the wind sharp against his face. The scientists were already waiting, 3 of them. Dr. Inez Calder, tall and sharp-eyed, her assistant Lyle, who kept glancing nervously at the horizon, and a third man Nathan hadn't met before, carrying a black case marked with hazard warnings. "You know the waters," Dr. Calder said. "You've heard the stories. Are you going to tell me we shouldn't go?" Nathan glanced at the case. "Stories don't bother me," he lied. "But the sea's got rules. Break them and it'll take you." By the time they left the breakwater, the town had shrunk to a line of pale roofs against the hills. The water was calm, almost unnaturally so. A bank of fog sat low on the horizon, exactly where the charts marked the Expanse. Nathan's compass needle began to twitch. The fog came on without warning. One moment the sky was a bleached gray dome, the next it was swallowed in pale vapor, soft and soundless. Nathan throttled down, letting the boat glide. He could feel the scientists watching him, waiting for some reassurance he couldn't give. "Visibility's dropping," he said, mostly to himself. Dr. Calder leaned over the rail, squinting into the white. "This is perfect. If the anomaly is atmospheric, this will be the ideal time to measure it." She tapped her assistant's shoulder. "Deploy the sensor buoys." Lyle moved to the stern, hands shaking as he clipped each orange buoy to a rope and cast it into the water. They bobbed briefly before fading into the fog. The black-cased man stayed near the bow, silent, his gaze fixed on the water as though reading something invisible. Nathan kept his eyes on the compass. The needle wasn't just twitching now, it was describing lazy circles drifting from north to west and back again. He tapped the glass, but it didn't stop. "You see this?" he asked. Dr. Calder came to his side, her breath making a faint cloud in the cold air. She studied the compass and smiled faintly. "Magnetic interference, exactly what we predicted." "Predicted?" Nathan repeated, but his voice was flat. The water beneath them was changing color. Not the deep green-blue of the coastal shelf, but something darker, almost black, like ink seeping upward. It reflected no light, swallowing the boat's shadow whole. Lyle returned from the stern. "Ma'am, the buoys aren't transmitting. I checked the receiver 3 times. Dr. Calder frowned but didn't answer immediately. Nathan noticed her grip tighten on the railing. The black-cased man still hadn't moved. "Drop anchor," she said suddenly. Nathan hesitated. "Here?" "Yes, this is it." The anchor went down, rope whispering through his gloved hands until it jolted to a stop. The boat rocked gently, but the sound of the chain was strangely muffled, as though the water had swallowed the clink of metal. Dr. Calder and Lyle began unpacking equipment, tripods, sonar arrays, waterproof cameras, while the third man finally knelt to open his black case. Inside were 3 cylindrical devices, each studded with copper coils and humming faintly. "What are those?" Nathan asked. The man looked up for the first time. His eyes were pale, almost colorless. "Transmitters," he said. "To speak with what's down there." Nathan felt the hairs rise on his arms. "Speak with?" The man didn't answer. And then, from somewhere deep beneath the hull, came a sound, low and drawn out, like a note from an organ played underwater. It thrummed through the deck and into Nathan's bones. It didn't sound human. The sound faded as suddenly as it had come, leaving the deck in a silence so complete Nathan could hear the creak of the hull and the faint click of Lyle's nervous jaw. Dr. Calder was already adjusting the tripod legs of the underwater camera rig. "Get the winch ready," she told Nathan without looking up. "We'll start with a visual sweep before dropping the sonar grid." Nathan wasn't sure she'd heard the noise at all, or maybe she had and was deliberately ignoring it. The camera rig slid into the black water with barely a ripple. A thick cable unspooled from the winch, feeding the live video back to the monitor bolted to the research table. Lyle hunched over it, his pale face lit by the cold glow of the screen. At first, there was nothing but the silt-heavy darkness. Then faint shapes emerged, columns of rock, or perhaps coral, twisted into unnatural spirals. "That's not on any geological survey," Nathan said quietly. "Good," Dr. Calder replied. "Means it's ours." The image swayed as the rig descended. Light from the camera's beams caught something metallic, an edge, a curve, half buried in the sediment. Nathan leaned closer. It looked like a section of hull plating, but the rivets were wrong. Too large, too crude. The black-cased man, still kneeling beside his transmitters, spoke for the first time since his earlier cryptic remark. "Not a shipwreck," he said. "Not one of ours." Lyle adjusted the camera's angle. For a moment, they all froze. The plating wasn't lying on the seafloor. It was part of something larger, something stretching out of view in both directions, like the rib of a massive carcass. "Depth?" Dr. Calder asked. 80 meters, Lyle said. "Visibility's only about 30. The camera turned again, and this time a shape drifted into view. It moved with a slow, deliberate pulse, pale and almost translucent, its edges wavering as if not entirely solid. For an instant, Nathan thought it might be a jellyfish. Then one of its edges flexed in a way that suggested bone. The organ note came again, louder, vibrating the winch handle beneath Nathan's hand. On the monitor, the pale shape vanished into the dark. "Bring it up," Nathan said. "No," Dr. Calder snapped. "Track it. We might never get this close again." Nathan gritted his teeth but worked the winch, paying out more cable. The camera followed the pale shimmer deeper, past the rib-like structures and into what looked like an open trench. That was when the monitor went black. The sound returned, longer this time, rising in pitch until Nathan's molars ached. The water against the hull shivered, as though something vast had moved just beneath them. Then, very faintly, Nathan heard another sound layered beneath the first. It was the sound of something knocking, 3 slow, deliberate taps from deep below. The knocking came again, 3 sharp, measured taps that reverberated through the boat's aluminum skin and into Nathan's hands on the winch. Lyle shot upright from the monitor, as if expecting to see something breaching alongside them. "What the hell is that?" Dr. Calder didn't answer right away. She was listening, her head tilted slightly, as if trying to measure the distance through sound alone. "It's directional," she murmured. "Not echo. Purposeful." Nathan's stomach tightened. "Fish don't knock. You've got something down there that's aware of us." The black-cased man rose smoothly from his crouch and began lowering one of his copper-studded transmitters over the side. "That's the point," he said. "We're here to listen and to speak back." "No," Nathan said, stepping toward him. "We're not here for whatever this is. We drop equipment, we get readings, we leave. That's it." Dr. Calder's voice was ice. "You were hired to operate the vessel, Mr. Carraway, nothing more. If you can't handle the scope of the mission, you're welcome to stay in the cabin." Nathan glanced toward Lyle, looking for some flicker of agreement, but the assistant's gaze was fixed on the fog curling over the water. It was thicker now, the kind that blurred the horizon into a pale, featureless dome. Another knock. This one came from the port side, lower, deeper, as if something were circling. The black-cased man pressed a switch on his transmitter. A low pulse of sound rolled out over the water, deep enough that Nathan felt it in his chest more than he heard it. It lasted 3 seconds, then faded. The response was immediate. From below came not 3 knocks, but 6, rapid and irregular like the drumming of fingers on a table. Then silence. Lyle's breathing quickened. That's communication." "No," Nathan said. "That's warning." Something brushed the hull. Not hard, more like the drag of heavy ropes or seaweed, but the weight of it made the boat sway gently. The transmitter's copper coils began to vibrate. The man in black crouched again, adjusting a dial. It's closer. Nathan didn't realize he was backing toward the wheelhouse until the knocking stopped entirely. In its place came the low, drawn-out organ note from before. Louder now, impossibly loud for something underwater. It wasn't just in the air, it was in his bones, his teeth, in the metal of the boat itself. Lyle clamped his hands over his ears. Dr. Calder's eyes shone, her face lit with the fever of discovery. Nathan's gaze slid to the depth gauge. The needle was rising. Whatever was down there was coming up. The organ notes swelled until Nathan was sure the aluminum hull would tear apart under the vibration. He gripped the wheelhouse doorway, trying to steady himself. The fog seemed to thicken with every second, pressing in on the deck like a living thing. Then, from the starboard side, the water bulged upward. Not a wave, not a swell. Something beneath was displacing it, forcing the surface to dome unnaturally high before collapsing outward in a silent rush. Nathan's first instinct was to throttle forward, to put distance between them and whatever had just broken the surface. But Dr. Calder stepped to the rail, holding up a hand. "Wait," she breathed. Through the fog, a shadow moved. No, not moved, shifted. Nathan's mind struggled to place its scale. It was as if a fragment of the seafloor had lifted itself free, slick and glistening, patterned with long, pale striations like scars. Something broke the water's skin. A ridge, no, a spine, jutted upward, its surface ridged with barnacle-like growths the size of dinner plates. They glistened in the cold light, and from somewhere deep below, a faint mechanical clicking joined the still resonating hum. Nathan realized he was holding his breath. Beside him, Lyle whispered, "That's not a fish. That's not." The ridge vanished in a slow, deliberate roll, like the turning of some immense body. The water around it boiled in tight spirals, then went still again. The black-cased man adjusted his transmitter and sent another pulse. This time the sound that returned wasn't a knock or a hum, it was a chorus. Multiple notes, overlapping, some impossibly high-pitched, others so low they rattled the railing. "It's not alone," Lyle said. Nathan's hands tightened on the wheel. "Then we're leaving. Now." Dr. Calder's tone sharpened. "No, we're documenting. This is—" Her words were cut off by a sudden impact against the hull, hard enough to jolt them all sideways. The fog parted just long enough for Nathan to see it. A massive shape sliding just beneath the surface, trailing pale, ribbon-like appendages that moved in unsettlingly deliberate motions. The depth gauge needle jerked wildly, as if the sensor couldn't decide how deep the water was anymore. "Doc," Nathan said, voice low, "you don't understand." Another impact, harder this time. Lyle stumbled, catching himself on the equipment rack. The tripod clattered to the deck. From somewhere in the fog came the sound of water being displaced, followed by a wet, tearing noise that Nathan couldn't place until he saw one of the sensor buoys drift past, smashed open, its electronics hanging like torn viscera. "They're dismantling the equipment," Lyle said, his voice high with panic. Nathan pushed past Dr. Calder toward the controls. "We're leaving before they decide to dismantle us." He pushed the throttle forward. The engine coughed, roared, and then died. The black-cased man didn't look up from his transmitter. "It won't let us go yet." From below, the knocking started again. This time, it wasn't 3 taps. It was a steady, relentless beat. The relentless beat echoed through the hull like a second heartbeat, one the boat had no business having. Nathan's fingers flew over the ignition switch, cranking again and again, but the engine only coughed and shuddered before falling silent. Dr. Calder leaned over his shoulder, her voice sharp. "It's probably a fuel line issue." "No," Nathan said without looking at her. "I serviced her yesterday. There's nothing wrong with the engine." The black-cased man knelt by his transmitter, slowly turning a brass dial. The copper coils glowed faintly, as though drawing heat from the damp air. "They don't want us to leave yet." Nathan spun toward him. "And you say that like it's a good thing." Lyle was at the stern, peering over the side. Something's touching the propeller." Nathan pushed past him and leaned out. The water was so dark he couldn't see more than a few inches down, but he could hear it, a faint scraping, as if something was coiling around the shaft. The beat from below continued, perfectly steady. The fog shifted, thinning for just a moment. and Nathan caught sight of movement to port. Something pale, long, and jointed, rising just high enough to break the surface before sliding away again. It wasn't the sleek curve of a fish or the roll of a mammal. It bent in angles. "We cut whatever's on the prop," Nathan said. "That's not a good idea," the man in black replied without looking up. "Why not?" Nathan demanded. The man glanced at him, because in their language, cutting free might be a declaration of hostility. "They?" Lyle's voice cracked. "What the hell do you mean, they?" The beat under the hull stopped. The silence it left behind was worse. Nathan felt his skin crawl. Then, from somewhere far below, came a slow, resonant moan, the same organ note as before, but drawn out until it became something almost like speech. The coils on the transmitter pulsed in sync with it, each flash of light reflecting in the man's pale eyes. "They're asking us something," he said softly. "What?" Dr. Calder's voice was barely above a whisper. The man in black smiled faintly. "They want to know why we've come." Before anyone could respond, something struck the starboard side hard enough to send Lyle sprawling. The boat lurched, the deck tilting underfoot. Pressure, immense and steady, pushing them sideways as if trying to turn the vessel toward the center of the expanse. "We're being herded," he said. The fog closed in again, denser now, swallowing the horizon. Nathan realized with a sick twist of the stomach that he could no longer see the way they had come. The man in black stood, transmitter still humming in his hands. "Then we should go where they want us to." Nathan stared at him. "You don't come back from the center." The man only smiled. The pressure on the starboard side didn't let up. Whatever was in the water had the strength of a tide and the precision of a hand. Nathan tried reversing, gunning the throttle in short bursts, but the propeller only shuddered uselessly, still entangled in whatever had wrapped itself there. Dr. Calder braced herself against the cabin doorway, watching the fog beyond the bow as if it were a curtain waiting to lift. "We're moving without propulsion," she said, voice tinged with awe. "We're being dragged," Nathan corrected. The boat's wake foamed in irregular swirls, the water behind them flattening unnaturally fast, like ink spreading on paper. The beat under the hull had stopped completely now, replaced by the occasional faint scrape of something against the keel, deliberate, measured, as though inspecting them. Lyle had gone pale. "How far to the center?" he asked. Nathan glanced at the GPS. The coordinates were nonsense, numbers jumping and spinning as if the system couldn't decide where they were. "No way to tell. Out here, you don't measure distance. You measure time until something happens." The fog ahead shifted. A pale glow bled through it, diffuse and pulsing like light underwater. Nathan's first thought was that it might be another boat, but the rhythm of the glow was too slow, too steady, and it came from somewhere much larger than any vessel. Dr. Calder grabbed one of her cameras. "This is it. This is what we're here for." The black-cased man knelt by his transmitter again, tuning it until it emitted a low, harmonic chord that seemed to resonate with the distant glow. "They're opening the way." Nathan kept his eyes on the light. "Or they're showing us the trap." The fog peeled back in thin ribbons, and Nathan's breath caught. The water ahead was wrong. It wasn't moving like water should. It was rotating in a vast, slow spiral, the surface curving downward toward a point they couldn't see. The glow came from somewhere beneath that spiral, pulsing like the heartbeat of something enormous. The dragging force increased. Loose equipment rattled across the deck, and Lyle had to grab the railing to keep from sliding. "That's not natural," Nathan said. "Currents don't move like that." Dr. Calder's voice was trembling now, not from fear, but from wonder. "We're over something alive." The man in black looked up at Nathan. "Alive, yes, but not in the way you understand it." The spiral's pull brought them closer to its center, the glow intensifying until Nathan could see faint shapes in it. Arched structures, like the ruins of colossal gates, half buried in the dark below. Something moved between them, large enough to eclipse the light entirely for a few seconds. Lyle's voice broke. "That's not one thing. That's a lot of them." The boat creaked, the sound sharp against the muffled air. Nathan realized his palms were slick on the wheel, his mind screaming at him to turn back. But there was no back anymore. The center of the spiral yawned beneath them, a dark mouth ringed with light. The glow pulsed once more, and from below came a deep, resonant call that seemed to reach up into the fog and pull them the last few yards forward. The bow tilted down. The bow dipped into the spiral's pull, the boat groaning as though protesting. Nathan braced his legs and tightened his grip on the wheel, but the controls were meaningless now. The water was in command. The air grew heavier, saturated with salt and something else, a faint metallic tang that reminded Nathan of blood. The fog above didn't disperse, it simply stayed suspended, a ceiling of pale nothingness. Dr. Calder's camera clicked and whirred, but she didn't speak. Her eyes were wide, fixed on the glow below them. The man in black pressed another sequence into his transmitter. 3 low pulses, a pause, 2 more. Nathan didn't like the way the coils flickered, or the way the sound seemed to vanish into the depths without any echo at all. The spiral's walls weren't made of water alone. The current revealed long, shadowy shapes keeping pace with them, their outlines visible only when the pale glow caught on their skin, if it was skin. They moved in perfect synchronization, each pulse of the glow casting them into sharper relief. Elongated torsos, limbs too many to count, heads that bent at unnatural angles. One of them turned. Nathan's stomach twisted as he realized there was no face, just a smooth surface with faint, shifting impressions, like ripples passing over sand. Yet somehow, it was looking at them. "God," Lyle whispered. "They're escorting us." The temperature dropped sharply, each breath condensing in front of their mouths. Nathan could feel the cold seeping into his bones. The spiral narrowed. The glow was no longer a distant haze but a defined source below, a ring of massive, arch-like structures encircling a central void. The arches looked carved, their surfaces inscribed with looping symbols that seemed to shift when you looked directly at them. "They built that," Dr. Calder breathed. "They are that," the man in black corrected. The boat slowed, as if something beneath had caught and was holding it in place. The water around them stilled, though the sense of downward pull remained. Nathan glanced at the depth gauge, then quickly looked away. The numbers weren't climbing anymore, they were unreadable strings of characters. One of the shapes in the spiral wall broke formation and drifted closer. It moved with a kind of deliberation that made Nathan's skin crawl. Slowly, it raised an appendage, long, jointed, ending in a fan-like spread of filaments, and touched the hull. The organ note returned, this time soft, almost like a question. The man in black answered with a single pulse from the transmitter. The glow beneath them flared, and the arches began to rotate. Not physically. Their positions didn't change, but the light within them shifted, as if the entire sea had tilted around some unseen axis. Nathan felt it then, not just the pull of the water, but something brushing against his thoughts, a probing, cold and immense, like a hand reaching into a locked room. Lyle staggered back from the railing, clutching his head. "They're in my mind," he gasped. Nathan gritted his teeth, trying to push the sensation away, but the more he resisted, the stronger it grew. And then, in his mind, he heard it. A voice, vast and deep as the trench itself. "Why have you come?" The voice wasn't sound in the air, it was vibration in bone, pressure in the skull. Nathan felt it more than heard it, a weight behind his eyes that made his teeth ache. "Why have you come?" Lyle pressed his palms hard against his temples. "Make it stop! God, make it stop!" Dr. Calder's face was pale, but her eyes were bright with something like reverence. "It's communicating. This is unprecedented." Nathan stared at her. Unprecedented isn't worth dying for. The black-cased man didn't look away from the glowing arches. "You came here knowing there were things in these waters no one had mapped. You took the contract. Now you see what you signed up for." The pressure in Nathan's mind surged, and he staggered. Images flashed in the dark behind his eyes. Shapes that might have been cities under black water, columns rising from endless plains, things moving between them that dwarfed ships. "Why have you come?" Dr. Calder stepped toward the transmitter. "We came to learn," she said aloud, as though that mattered. "We came to see you." The man in black adjusted the dials, sending 3 long pulses into the deep. The coils shivered. For a moment the pressure eased. Then the reply came, not in words, but in a cascade of feelings. Curiosity, hunger, warning. And then another image, this one sharp enough to make Nathan gasp. A coastline, modern and familiar, swallowed in a tide that wasn't water. Pale shapes moving through streets, silence where cities had been. Lyle's voice cracked. They're showing us the future. No, Nathan said, swallowing hard. They're showing us what they've done before. The glow in the arches flared, casting the spiral walls into stark relief. Nathan counted at least a dozen of the escorting shapes now, each holding position like guards. Dr. Calder was speaking rapidly into her recorder, her voice trembling with excitement. First contact protocol, reactive telepathy, evidence of large-scale geoformation. The voice came again, sharper this time. You will not return. The arches began to pulse in unison, and Nathan felt the boat shudder. The water around them wasn't still anymore. It was rising, but not as waves. Columns of it twisted upward like the arms of a whirlpool turned inside out. Lyle clutched Nathan's arm. We have to get out, now. The man in black's pale eyes flicked to Nathan. We can't leave yet. You've seen it. They don't let go until they decide you belong somewhere else. Somewhere else, Nathan demanded. The man smiled faintly. Beneath. The arches rotated again, not physically, but in some way Nathan's mind couldn't explain, and the spiral's center opened wider. The glow became a yawning light, pulling at them harder than any current. Nathan had time for one thought. If we go down there, we don't come back. And then the bow tilted forward, and the sea took them. The light swallowed them whole. It wasn't like descending into deeper water. There was no gradual dimming, no muffled blue. Instead, the surface simply vanished overhead, replaced by a shimmering veil that rippled like heat on asphalt. Nathan's first instinct was that they'd gone through some kind of thermocline, but the air around him was wrong, too still, too heavy. The boat floated, yet the water under the hull seemed thicker, almost viscous. The arches loomed larger now, their immense shapes carved from stone that pulsed faintly, as though something within it was alive. Symbols twisted along their surfaces, curling and straightening when he looked away. The escorting shapes drifted closer, circling them in slow orbits. Up close, Nathan could see they were neither entirely flesh nor entirely something else. Plates of rough, coral-like material segmented their bodies, and pale, jointed limbs fanned out into filaments that swayed in invisible currents. Lyle gripped the railing, staring upward. That's sky? Nathan followed his gaze. It wasn't a sky in any human sense. Above was a dome of shifting darkness, shot through with streaks of pale light that bent and wavered like reflections on the underside of ice. Something massive moved across it, blotting out the glow in slow passes. We're under an enclosed surface, Nathan said. Like a cavern. A cavern the size of a city. Dr. Calder was already recording, her voice hushed. Air pocket stability, impossible depth, bioluminescent architecture. The man in black was silent, his transmitter clutched tightly in both hands. He was staring not at the arches, but beyond them, toward a vast, tiered structure rising from the center of this hidden sea. It was built from the same living stone, each tier crowned with more of the curling symbols. From the base of the structure came movement, dozens, no, hundreds of the pale, jointed beings, gliding through the thick water with effortless grace. They moved in patterns, weaving between the stone pillars like dancers in some alien ritual. A low hum filled the chamber, resonating through the arches and into Nathan's ribs. It was the same tone they'd heard above, but now it was joined by others, harmonizing in a layered chorus. They're singing, Dr. Calder whispered. Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that the song wasn't for them, it was about them. The hum rose, and from the top of the tiered structure emerged something larger than all the rest. It glided forward slowly, each movement impossibly smooth, until it loomed above the boat like a cliff. Its limbs were fewer but longer, its plating darker, its symbols glowing brighter. The voice came again, not in his ears but directly in his thoughts. You have crossed. You will remain. Nathan's mouth went dry. We're not staying. The man in black finally spoke. It's not a choice. The great being lowered one filamented limb toward the boat, stopping just short of touching the deck. The air grew colder still. Nathan felt the probing in his mind again, stronger this time, sifting through memories like pages in a book. And then it found something, some image or thought it wanted, and the light in the chamber flared. The flare of light burned through Nathan's thoughts, washing away everything except the image the thing had taken from him. A memory of Marrow Bay at dawn, gulls circling over the harbor, the salt sting in the air. He felt it turning the image over, examining it, pulling at the edges as though it could step through. This is your world. The voice was immense, layered, each word pressed into his mind like a seal into wax. Nathan tried to push it back, but it was inside him, past any defense. Your world sleeps above. Our world waits below. Dr. Calder was shaking, but not from fear. It's showing the ocean floor ridges, currents, habitats. Nathan looked at her sharply. It's not showing you, it's mapping you. Lyle hunched over, both hands clutching his head. I can't, it's taking memories. The black-cased man stood perfectly still, eyes half-lidded. They're collecting, always have been. Every ship that vanishes here, every diver who never surfaces, they're part of the archive now. Archive? Nathan demanded. He finally looked at Nathan, his pale eyes strangely calm. They keep what they value. Minds, knowledge, sometimes whole bodies. The great being above them moved closer. Nathan could feel the wake of its presence without it even touching the hull. Symbols along its limbs brightened, pulsing in a steady rhythm. The smaller ones in the water below began to echo the pulse, their own light synchronizing. The voice came again. You have come far. You have brought words. You will stay. The man in black's transmitter let out a sharp burst of sound, almost like static. The great being paused, its lights flickering in an irregular pattern. Nathan glanced at the device and saw the coils glowing brighter than ever. They're offering us a choice, the man said quietly. One mind stays, the others leave. Lyle's head snapped up. Leave? You mean? I mean the boat goes back, but they keep someone, alive. Dr. Calder's hands tightened around her recorder. We can't throw away the chance to understand them. If one of us remains, the knowledge we could. Nathan cut her off. You're talking about volunteering? Her eyes flicked to his, then away. The great being shifted, lowering its limb closer. Nathan could feel it like a shadow in his skull, waiting for an answer. The cold pressed tighter around them, and Nathan knew the question wasn't going away. The great being's presence in his mind was patient, but beneath that patience was inevitability. One stays. Lyle's voice cracked. We can't. There's no way to know what they'll do. Dr. Calder spoke over him, her tone steady but trembling at the edges. If one of us remains, the rest survive. That's the exchange. Nathan's stomach turned. That's not an exchange. That's a ransom. The black-cased man finally moved, setting his transmitter down on the deck. I've been here before, he said. Not all the way under, but close enough. I knew this would happen. Lyle stared at him. And you came back? The man smiled faintly. I came back because I promised them something worth their time. He looked up at the towering shape above, the lights crawling along its limbs. They keep their bargains. Dr. Calder took a step forward. Then let me be the one. I can record, observe. The man shook his head. You want to study them. You try to change the terms. They don't like that. They want someone who already belongs here. Nathan felt the being's attention shift, away from Calder, away from Lyle, and settle on him. The pressure in his skull deepened, and with it came a rush of images. The familiar coastline of Marrow Bay, but empty. The harbor without boats, the streets without voices. You want me, Nathan said. You carry the sea. You return to it. Nathan's breath caught. They'd chosen him not because he was the captain or because he was strong, but because he was theirs already, in some way he didn't understand. The black-cased man picked up the transmitter again and sent 3 short pulses. If you agree, they'll let the others go. If you don't. The water around the boat rippled, dozens of pale shapes tightening their circle. Lyle's face was wet, though Nathan wasn't sure if it was from tears or the mist. Don't do this, he whispered. Nathan looked from him to Dr. Calder. Her expression was unreadable, caught between scientific hunger and the weight of the choice. He exhaled slowly. Start the engine when I'm gone. Don't look back. Before either of them could answer, he stepped to the rail. The water's surface was like glass, the glow from below painting it in pale green. The great being lowered its limb until it was level with him. Nathan reached out, and the moment his hand touched it, the cold shot through him like a current. His vision dimmed, not from darkness, but from something pulling him inward. The last thing he heard was the engine sputtering to life above him. When Dr. Calder and Lyle broke the surface hours later, the fog thinned just enough to reveal the outline of Marrow Bay in the distance. Neither of them spoke. Beneath, in the place where the arches glowed, Nathan opened his eyes to a world of cold light and silent voices. He was not alone, and he knew he would never see the surface again. Thanks for listening. Hit the like button if you really like this story, and don't forget to subscribe.